And I just really want to welcome everyone who's coming into the room right now. We're having a wonderful crowd, wonderful attendance today. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to be, let's see if I can get this going here. We're going to have a wonderful, hopefully, session here. If I can get this in. Oh, there we go. Okay, so my name is Dr. Ariel Policano, and we are joined by a very special guest today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ariel Policano. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I practice in Portland, Oregon, and I teach classes in energy medicine, bioresonance, and the particular software that I work with is called the Genius Insight. And I have a very special guest that's agreed to join me in a never before done class. So those of you who are with us today, you are in for something very special. So I want to properly introduce Dr. Carolyn Mine. She's a pioneer in health and nutrition. Her expertise is in synthesizing and developing the most effective means of healing to achieve and maintain optimal health. In 1983, after 9 years of research, Dr. Mine combined chiropractic and acupuncture to form transpersonal physiology. Recognizing the need to strengthen the pelvic floor and tone the appropriate abdominal muscles, she developed Core Fitness, a Pilates-based program. And she holds several different degrees. She also is the author of Different Bodies, Different Diets. And she's the author of Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils. And she is also the author of some wonderful body type books. So without further ado, I want to welcome Dr. Carolyn Mine. Hello, Carolyn. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. This is great. I really appreciate being able to work with someone who has such a great level of expertise. And so one of the things that I've had people ask me about is to do something as far as an app for the oils book. And my reluctance to doing an app is I wanted something that would do more than just put the book in a digital format, because it's already that way as far as the Kindle is concerned. And so I've been really excited in working with Ariel and using the Genius and the response that people have had with the oils book, and using that with the Genius to be able to really bring this to the next level.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're gonna really get into the core. I guess just everybody do a quick sound check. Just let me know if you can hear the sound okay. And let me know what you're seeing on your screen right now. Are you seeing both of us, or are you just seeing the sort of the presentation? Because I just want to see which one we're showing at this time and make sure that you're seeing the right thing. So Carolyn, I want to also just sort of talk about the basics. Many people really revere you in the Young Living community, and you've been such a wonderful teacher for them. I know that they absolutely love this book, Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils. And just to let people who know, people who are here who are using the Genius Insight Biofeedback tool, we are getting a little bit of an echo, Carolyn. I don't know if that's on your end or mine. Do you have another monitor going or at the same time, or no?
As a matter of fact, I do. Let me go ahead and close that out, because that's right behind.
Okay, Lisa, thank you so much. So you see both of us in the presentation, both of you and the presentation. Good, that's exactly what I want. Okay, and so that sounds a lot better, Carolyn. Thank you so much. So yeah, so you see both of us. So see, it was worth getting all of that, cleared up. Okay, wonderful. So I'm still getting a little bit, but I think I'll be fine. So anyway, those of you who are on here who use biofeedback know that we have implemented Carolyn's paradigm into the Genius Insight, and we're able to test very quickly to see what oil on point is part of the issue. So we're going to go into all of that. There are people here who have never heard of biofeedback, and some people have never heard of Carolyn. So it's going to be really wonderful. But Carolyn wrote this book called Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils. And it sort of lets you know that there is a combined force here, that essential oils themselves can be used for releasing these emotional patterns. So with that sort of basic concept, Carolyn, tell us what you were trying to achieve and why you chose to combine oils with an opportunity to open up blockages emotionally.
Well, when it came to doing emotional work, I found that just expressing the emotion was one part of it. But, if you're expressing a lot of emotions and you're beating the pillow and so on, you've got that negative emotion that's going through over and over again. So in reality, all you're doing is reinforcing the negative side. So I looked at that and thought, okay, there's got to be a way to be able to shift this energy. And according to Einstein's theory of relativity, everything that has a negative polarity has an opposite and equal reaction, which would be the positive polarity. So I was looking at the various different emotions and saying, what's the positive side to that? And then another aspect is in Chinese acupuncture, we know that various different emotions are stored in different organs. And so by doing the emotional points and using the acupuncture alarm points, that's another way of being able to connect the emotional body and to be able to break the cycle in as many possible areas as we can. Another point that a lot of people are familiar with are the emotional points on the forehead. And those are things we used with applied kinesiology when we were looking at doing any emotional work of any kind. Another area that I had done extensive work with is affirmations. And what I was finding with the affirmations is the affirmations were one part, but how do you connect the affirmation with the emotion? And so by looking at the various different elements, and the next slide kind of explains that just a little bit, if you want to move that to
Oh,
the
absolutely.
next
Yeah,
slide.
sure.
And so I'm looking at the various different aspects that make up our essence. And so we're really familiar with the mental side. And so looking at part of this is I was looking at not only what's the emotion, the negative and the positive side of the emotion, but also taking personal responsibility, which is where a lot of the different teachings are of what did I do to create this situation. And so it's being being really responsible and seeing what's going on here and what do I need to learn from this. And that kind of goes into the spiritual part of it. And the spiritual part is the affirmation. And that's what am I affirming? What do I need to do in order to really break this cycle? And then, of course, the other area is the physical body. And so we know from various different studies that emotions can be stored in the body. And one of the reasons for using the acupuncture alarm points is it's a way of accessing the physical points in the body. So I found that you can really work with any particular aspect. So when you look at an emotion, you can look at it and you can talk about it and you can understand it, and we can deal with the mental aspect, which is really helpful. We can look at things from the physical aspects. We can do that with acupuncture and a lot of other body work. We can look at the emotional part. And so not only are we looking at the negative side, we also want to look at the positive because we want to know where that energy is really moving. And then, of course, the other area is getting above that. That's the spiritual plane. That's the affirmation. What do I need to learn from this experience? So my intention in putting together the oils book was to really clear or break the cycle in as many areas as we possibly can to be able to get to our desired goal as quickly as we can.
Of
So
course,
that's
that
kind of
makes,
the
yeah,
balance
that
or
makes
the
a lot of sense. When you look at anyone, especially if they have a chronic thing that they're trying to overcome, or even if they're trying to break through a particular block in their life, like maybe having more abundance in their life or having a healthier relationship, um, they're always sort of facing some common blockages that may recur over their lifetime. Now, I understand some of that can be predicted or recognized through your development of the body type system. Tell us a little bit about that and how it relates to sort of repeating emotional patterns.
Well, what I was finding with the body type, I started from the dietary aspect, and then I found that each particular body type also had a personality profile that was really associated with the function of the dominant gland. And then with that, there was um, the the area of who am I, which goes a long way in identifying um, not only who you are, but also what motivates you. And then as we're looking at this, we look at characteristic traits. With those characteristic traits, you can express those on the at worst side, and then there's also the at best, which is your potential compared to you. And so then the next element is knowing that there's an at worst side. What do we do to be able to shift those? And the shifting it by using the emotional patterns in order to clear it. So I found that there are also core emotional patterns for each particular body type. And while we all have all of the emotions, there are certain ones that for certain types are more of a deep-seated issue than they are for others.
That's wonderful. Tell us maybe about one of the body types. Like, let's just start with the thyroid type. What would some like physical characteristics or personality traits, and what would be the related emotional issues that might come up for them?
Well, one of the things with the thyroid, when you look at what the thyroid does, the thyroid's the bridge. It's the bridge between the head and the body. One of the things you'll notice with the thyroid body type is thyroids have theories. And so they have these different theories, and then they go about of seeing how they work in the world. And what thyroids do that's unique more to the thyroid is if they get information that doesn't match their theory, they change the theory to match the information that they're actually getting.
Wow, interesting.
It amazes me when people change the information to match their theory.
What are some of the emotional patterns that might come up as an example for a thyroid?
A real
And
a
go
real
ahead.
key example is the fear of speaking out. And so the thyroid is the bridge. And when you find your challenges, the challenge, the other side of that is your greatest strength. So that's why it's absolutely essential to look at where your challenges are and what do you need to do to be able to transmute that, because that's really where your power lies. Um,
Mm,
Other things can be misunderstood, which is kind of that why do you not want to speak out? Another one is injustice. Um,
mm,
so that's another one. It's not fair.
mm. And so these types of feelings could translate to some of the things that might come up in terms of the essential oils. Are there certain essential oils represented by those emotional patterns that a thyroid type might be drawn to?
Well, again, you want to look at what's the emotion for each particular one. And
Sure.
so if we're looking at the um, fear of speaking out, I think that one, I think that one's white angelica. Um,
So just let's say, and you can look it up, but let's say it was that, see, a thyroid type might want to keep some white angelica sort of on hand. If they know their body type, they might be able to recognize and be prepared for some of those emotional patterns that occur for them because it's their nature and it's sort of their lifelong lesson. And so they might want to keep some white angelica sort of close by in their collection because it
it's
might come in
well,
handy for those really charged
it's
days.
actually Sacred Mountain, and
Oh, yeah, Sacred Mountain. That's right.
so the interesting thing with Sacred Mountain is is not only is Sacred Mountain good for the throat, which is where this fear of speaking out is stored, but Sacred Mountain is also really good for the third chakra. And the third chakra has to do with being part of mass consciousness.
Mm.
And the other side of that is manifesting Christ consciousness. The
Mm.
way you get there is by being conscious. So your affirmation is I am conscious.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And
That's
what's
absolutely amazing. Yeah.
really interesting is when you go to the oils section and you look at a particular oil and you look at all the emotions that are associated with it, and you start seeing how they link together, because Sacred Mountain is also associated with injustice, which is stored in the thyroid. And it's this fear of speaking out that's in the throat. We can also go with fear of hearing, that's the ears. We
And
can
for
have to do.
those of you who may not know, if you have Carolyn's book, you can actually be sort of following along with us. We're actually just following on page 76 of her book, and she's referring to that. And I love this idea, like a person who's a thyroid type could identify that sacred mountain, and they could actually look up all those different little triggers, little pieces, little recurring emotions that might come up for them, and see that sacred mountain sort of applies to all of them. I absolutely love that. And would um, thyroid types be more likely to have a thyroid issue?
No, because your
Ah,
dominant gland is your strongest. And so some of
really?
the characteristics of a very strong thyroid that you'll identify with the thyroid body type is they typically have good hair, good thick hair, and strong nails, because these are other characteristics of good thyroid function. And
Interesting. Oh, that's
the
fascinating.
the way the gland works is your dominant gland is the strongest. That ends up being the one that's your reserve. And that works until you exhaust that dominant gland. And then that's when you can start seeing problems in those areas. But it usually is a lot of other areas that start showing up first.
So, is a thyroid body type, if it's not thyroid, do they have any particular area of weakness that they should be aware of?
Um, Blood sugar areas can be one of the things that's there. That's why diet ends up being important. And so for the thyroid, protein vegetables are the biggest area. You'll want the tartar fruits rather than the ones that are really sweet. And
Hmm.
sugar, well, sugar will stimulate the thyroid, and that ends up being a problem. So you want to make sure that you really pay attention to your diet and avoid the refined sugar. You can also get into the pastries, which again goes back to the flour, a carbohydrate, and again, you're looking at sugars. So,
That's really, really cool. That's really exciting. Is there another body type that comes to mind that's either fairly popular or just sort of is at top of mind right now? I know this is something that people are really resonating with and really getting a lot, sort of a depth of understanding out of.
what's interesting is different people that I found that really are attracted to various different types of studies. And one of the ones that I'm thinking of is the eye. And
Uh-huh.
the eye body type, eyes are visionaries. They tend to see things that other people don't see. And
Wonderful.
for those of you who are familiar with Young Living, then Mary Young is an eye.
Oh, interesting.
And other tidbits of information, since we're on different body types, is Gary Young is a lung body type. And so the area that I found to be really interesting with the different body types is you're going to have two areas that are your areas of strength. And then you'll have the other two that would be more that recessive area.
Hmm.
So for the eye body type and also the thyroid body type, the um, aspects that are the strongest are the mental spiritual.
Hmm.
And spiritual is intuitive. It doesn't mean that we don't have our other parts. It just means that when we're stressed, what do we ultimately rely on? And when you're looking at mental or emotional, it's what do you rely on, your head or your gut? And that's not the same as your intuition. Your intuition is the spiritual part. And then the other side of that, so if we look at the lung body type, for example, and the dominant emotions for lung are emotional, physical. And so what's more real to you? Something you can see, feel, and touch, or an idea and concept. So idea concept, that's going to be the spiritual. The physical, something that's tangible, is the one that needs to see it to believe it. So that's another area where you'll start to see the physical manifestations.
That's wonderful. What are some of those emotional little speed bumps that eyes might hit up against that would sort of direct us in the direction of the book and some of the oils?
One of the ones that happens for the eye is when they get really stressed, they'll have a tendency to get overwhelmed.
Mm.
And so that would be overwhelmed. And on
You
that
look
particular one, um, that is in vision, and it's I focus my energy. So it's being able to really stay on task. And then another one that will come up for the eye when um, they're stressed is they have a tendency to suppress their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's this belief, I'm strong, I can handle it, because a lot of times there are people around them that are falling apart and are very emotional, so they're the
Oh
ones that
no.
hold things together. And the tendency is to internalize the emotions. That works fine until the emotions finally get to the point where the body can't handle it, and that's when you can get to various different conditions. And my father was an eye, and so
Mm.
um, he ended up dying of cancer at 45. So it was part of that
Oh my
area of
gosh.
not dealing with a lot of the various different emotional areas, which was one of the things that led me to really exploring the emotional area to just see what do we do, what are the causative factors, and how do we deal with this.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then another emotion that you'll see with the eyes is uh, when they get stressed, they have this other area where they like to give somebody the finger.
Oh, before we go there, I want to talk about that, and people
Uh-huh.
really well, a lot of people identify with that. But what I did was I actually, when you said about vision, envision, I looked up envision the oil since that was came from overwhelmed. It goes to the oil envision. Then I went to envision on the oils, which is going to be on page 70. And that I think gives me some more emotional resonances for the eye. Would that be correct? Like
Yes.
attachment, confinement, and overwhelmed, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and what you'll notice with the oil, so it really doesn't make any difference what entry point you use. You'll
Hmm.
find that you can look at the emotions that are associated with that particular oil, and that will take you into other areas to be able to clear things from much broader base. Um,
Yeah, that's really exciting. But I think it's really fun to know what the overall um, sort of the outlook is for yourself to understand your body type helps you to understand yourself and also can help you to understand your partner or people around you. Some people were asking, well, how do I know my body type? And Carolyn offers this service on her website, and stay tuned because we're going to show you a way that you can actually get your body type assessed completely free, courtesy of Carolyn, and we'll be talking about that towards the end of our class today.
Now, knowing your body type of not only you, but your family members is huge when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
And what we tend to think is we tend to think that everybody thinks the way we think. And if we explain it to them well enough, they'll get it.
You mean it doesn't
You're
work that
laughing.
way?
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't work that way. And because I used to think if there was something that I could do easily, somebody else could do it if they would apply themselves. It doesn't work that way.
So tell us a bit about maybe two different body types and if one was one and one was something else, how they might relate to each other, or if your spouse was a certain body type, how you might better understand them.
Well, when you look at relationships, typically what will happen is you will connect on one particular level. And so, for example, um, if a lot of relationships, you would have a mental physical with a mental spiritual. And so thyroid is mental spiritual. And an example of a mental physical would be lymph or thymus. A lot of these tend to be more physical, more grounded in a sense, and you look at where do you connect. Another classic area when we look at relationships is we think of the adrenal male, which is a classic football linebacker, and he is mental physical. And then the classic female, when you're looking at the picture of the female, would be gonadal. This is the one that loves to be pregnant, and she's the homemaker. And she also is the one you see a lot of times in the artistic endeavors. A lot of hairdressers are gonadal because, and also a lot of interior design, because their essence, what gives them the greatest joy, is to bring beauty into being. So they see the beauty in people and they just want to work to be able to really bring that out. And also the gonadal is highly emotional, and whereas the adrenal is mental, and so a lot of times you've got that balance in the relationship and they connect on the physical level. So you'll notice that with a lot of relationships is there's one area where you connect and there's the other area where you're opposites. This
Yeah.
allows you to be able to bring another component in.
Oh, very interesting. But sometimes there could be conflict, there could be harmony, but there could also be conflict in not really understanding where the other one is coming from. And in
Right.
a way, this body type, knowing this helps to bridge that gap and create that level of understanding between the two different types.
It's huge. And so especially when you read the personality profile of the characteristic traits, who that person is, what motivates them, and then you look at the characteristic traits expressed on the at worst side, you look at the characteristic traits on the at best. The at best gives you that guidance so that you know how do you support the person, how do you help them build their self-esteem by focusing on the areas that they do well. And then on the at worst, that's when you're going to be looking at the emotional patterns and how do we transmute the negative emotion into the positive one.
Excellent. That's really, really fantastic. Um, so if somebody finds themselves in a certain emotional state, they could actually look up that emotion in the book and then let that be sort of a guide to the rest of the book, right?
Exactly. And so if you go to the next slide, then that is an example of kind of what to look for. And that would be when we're looking at the life lesson, or we also look at the emotional point. A lot of times that's where people will start, and that's this emotions reference. And
Wonderful.
so what you'll notice with that emotions reference, and a lot of times this is where people will start. And so a good emotion to begin with, this is one that all of us are really familiar with, is anger. And so we know what happens when somebody expresses their anger towards us. We know what happens when we express our anger towards somebody else. And neither one of those are good. So if you're not going to express your anger, what are you going to do with it? If
Mm.
you internalize it, we know that's not good because that leads to degenerative diseases. And so you can either end up with heart attacks or cancer. You know, that's kind of when we look at what happens to people. And so that's not good. The other thing you could do is you're going to physically release that anger in some way. So that's why a lot of times physical activity, that's another way of just moving energy. But the problem with that is you haven't really solved the problem. So it helps temporarily. To look at what the positive side is, we want to look at what causes anger. And you can look at the traffic. That's a good way to see that. So basically what happens in traffic is traffic's moving along and everything's fine, and then we hit a roadblock, traffic slowdown. So what are we going to do? Um, so we can sit there and wait, or we can look at, is there an alternative route? And if we don't know what to do, that energy will continue to build until finally there is an explosion. And an explosion of negative energy is anger. An explosion of positive energy is laughter.
Mm.
And you've heard many times that if you want a relationship to survive, you need to learn how to laugh.
Isn't that so true? That's wonderful. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Now, you've connected the anger to the oil purification. Why is purification the appropriate oil when the emotion experienced is anger?
Um, when it came to looking to see which oils would work, essentially what I did is I would scan the body, and where I really started, one of the other areas in looking at clearing emotional patterns is I had heard that Dr. Young had gone to Egypt and was visiting the temples along the Nile, and one of those temples was used for emotional clearing. And so the guide allowed him to go into a room which was off the main tour. And in that particular room, they um, worked on clearing emotional patterns for the people as they came through the initiation process. And so in that room, there was a table. There are hieroglyphics along the wall. The hieroglyphics showed the emotion and the oil that was used to clear that particular emotion. And so Dr. Young was able to photograph the walls, and I'm thinking, okay, now how do I get a copy of the photograph and then get it translated? When I asked that question, I heard a little voice inside my head that said, the same way you get the rest of your information. What that meant to me was go to the body. And so from there, I started asking the body. And the tool that I have used since I started practicing, which is about 40 years plus, is using the muscle testing. And you can use whatever tool you want to use. I just find that it is a really valuable tool for me. And what I would do when it comes to looking for that particular oil is I would go and I would scan the oils, check to see how that responded to the body on various different areas, tested that on a number of different people. And so when I found that I would find one oil that consistently worked for the same emotion on many different people, many different body types, then that's how I came up with this is the oil for this particular emotion.
But are there oils in purification that are very good for the liver to begin with? Because we know certainly the liver and anger are good friends. And so do you think about oils in purification as maybe sort of citrusy or have like a liver cleansing effect? Or we don't really say that, but may help to help the energy of the liver in some way?
Well, they definitely can. And so the oils in purification are citronella, lemongrass, rosemary, melaleuca,
Oh,
lavender, and myrtle.
interesting.
And and so you can go through and look at what the various different properties are. And what I found to be fascinating is I didn't start with looking at what are the properties of the various different oils when I was selecting the oils that are associated with the different emotions. What I have done is after I've found that oil, go back and look up the oils and what those specific oils do and the properties they have. And I'm always amazed at how everything fits.
That's really awesome. That's a very important point that you didn't look up the oils and then sort of reverse engineer them. Um, and some people have mentioned that the typing is very small, hard to read for some of you, but Carolyn's slide, this slide comes right out of her book on page 36. So if you do have the book, you can look at that. And by the way, you get the book on Kindle. You can, if you're watching right now, you can instantly download it from Amazon and just start looking at it right away. Or you can order it from Carolyn's website or on Amazon. They have a Prime service where you can get it in 2 days. And what I noticed with the Prime is that, Carolyn, they can also get your Kindle book for like $2.99. If they get the book, the hard copy of the book, they can get the Kindle at a very reduced price. So that's kind of a nice added benefit. Well, I find it fascinating that the oils end up kind of lining up with everything. Like when you cognitively pick apart the oils, they actually make sense for the emotion and the alarm point. Do you find that as well?
Absolutely. And the other thing that's amazing is when you start looking at the oil and you look at the emotions that are associated with that particular oil. And
Hmm.
um, so on the emotions reference, you'll notice we've got both the positive and negative side of the emotion. We have the affirmation, which is the way out. And so in our example with anger, for example, when you're stuck in traffic, the first thing we typically do is to turn on the radio to look at the traffic helicopter. But now our technology is a little better than that. We can just look it
Look at
up
our
on
phone.
Google, look at our phones exactly. But again, we're looking at where did the information come from in the first place. And so the affirmation, my direction is clear, is when you can get out of that physical mire, get above it, and look at it from a higher perspective. Yeah.
Wonderful. So if you're in anger and you apply some purification to that liver alarm point, would you then recommend, even just out of, you know, believe it and then you'll see it kind of a thing, just repeating the affirmation over and over again, sort of believing in advance that you'll see it, when you believe it, kind of thing?
Well, the affirmation, just using the affirmation alone is huge. And some
Yeah.
people will do that. Maybe they don't happen to have the oil handy, or
Hmm.
you've gone through the process. I just find that when you connect the negative and the positive side of the emotions, this is like changing, it's like building a bridge over that groove in the brain that causes you to go to anger no matter what happens. So any little thing upsets you, the next thing you know, you're into that point of the response, that anger response. And so knowing that you have a choice and that when you're in that situation, you can choose to either get angry and explode that way, or you can laugh about it. And that will also work to dissipate that energy. And then
Wonderful.
dissipating that energy is one area, but then the next thing is taking personal responsibility. So that's when you want to look at, why am I angry? What is it that's causing this? And then my direction is clear, is how do I get out of it? So I'm not constantly going into that same cycle over and over again.
I
And then go ahead.
I think that's the key. I think that that's really, hopefully, if you have cycles or patterns, you guys, that you notice happen again and again, or something in your life that you find difficult to resolve, then that's where this emotional pattern clearing comes in. Because as it opens up that locked energy, it allows you to manifest new opportunities and to have the openness and the energy, like the air and the oxygen, to move into better places in your life. Is that what you find from people who do this process, Carolyn?
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing that's really amazing is, what do you do with family members that don't particularly like all of these wonderful things that you've been doing to help the family? And so an easy way to do that is say, okay, and one of the other little side benefits is, men sometimes have two emotions, anger and sex. And so
Interesting.
it's it's the women that basically are connected with a lot of the emotional side and what's underneath that. And so you don't want to stop at just anger, but you want to look at what's underneath it. And so the
Mm.
first thing is, you can look at an emotion, and particularly with your kids, and say, okay, whether the kids are fighting or something like that, and it's just like, I'm feeling anger, rather than saying this is where it's coming from or anything else. You're owning it. And the other side of anger is laughter, and I'm going to shift this. And so then you can grab your purification oil and put the oil on the acupuncture alarm points, and where the acupuncture alarm points are on the little part where it says chart, and there are multiple charts that you can do. So for the anger, as we know from Chinese acupuncture, is stored in the liver, and I do use another point that's a little more specific for anger, which happens to be on the nipples. And so it could be a little interesting with hubbies sometimes, but otherwise you may want to be more discreet and use the point on the hand. And so that would be on the little finger side
Wow,
of the
that's
hand
fascinating. That's where the other
here.
alarm point is. Oh,
So
wow.
you can use the hand point, and the points are about the size of a $50. They follow intention, so you don't have to be precisely on the little pinpoint. So as long as you're in the general vicinity, then you've got it. We also have liver points on the feet, and there are some points on the ears as well. So you do have options when you're looking at what points you want to use. And so if we go
Wonderful.
to the next chart, then that's an example of the body reference point, and that body reference, the charts, are going to show you where those points are located. And another way of where do you start with this process is if you know what the emotion is, you can start with the emotions. If you're not sure, you can look at the body, because the nice thing about the body is it always tells you the truth. So if you have a pain in a particular area of your body and you're not sure what that relates to, go to the chart and then see what point that is, and then from there, then you can go to the body point, and it will tell you what oil and what emotion, and you can use that as an entry point.
Well, this morning in our class, in our biofeedback class this morning, we had a woman who had tinnitus. Is there a way
Mhm.
that you would have an entry point with one of these to something like that?
Well, I would look at ear. And so then when we go to the body reference, and the body
And where would that be?
reference
There's body references or in the book as well. It's another entry
book,
point.
it's another heading. And so it's a heading called body reference.
Oh, I see it now. Okay.
And so then we're going to look at ear. And
Okay.
so with the ear, then we can look at the inner ear, and the oil is Sacred Mountain. The emotion is fear of hearing. And
Interesting. Now, would
that
that
one,
tie in at all to the thyroid type if you saw something like that?
it may, but not necessarily.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So yeah, so tell us more about that, the fear of hearing.
Is there something that you don't want to hear? That's usually where it ends up coming up. What what don't you want to hear?
Hmm. And
Um,
would you think of that for tinnitus, or would you use the eustachian tube? Oh, it's kind of related. It says eustachian tube is fear of hearing the truth.
It definitely can be. And so a lot of
Mhm.
times you'll notice that there's a correlation between the different ones. So it may be just fear of hearing, it may be fear of hearing the truth. I find that a lot of dizziness is associated with the eustachian canal. And so that's where we've got even middle ear has to do with dizziness and vertigo. So we would use frankincense for that particular one.
Oh,
Um,
why is that frankincense there? Because this says helichrysum.
um, that I may have, because that particular version had a typo in it.
But middle ear is
I didn't
but
think that sounded right.
middle ear is frankincense, but
Okay,
eustachian
that's
tube
what I
is
was
helichrysum, and the middle ear is frankincense. So they're all sort of in the same,
in the
you know,
same vicinity.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah. That
something about responsibility came up on the Genius Biofeedback system today, and it's interesting that eustachian tube is also irresponsible or
mm-hmm,
wanting to take maybe more personal responsibility or something like that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So that's another element where that'll show up.
That's absolutely fascinating. So there are many different entry points through the book to sort of do some self-discovery. And you said before that you intended for this to be a self-help book.
Exactly. And so with this, if you like a particular oil, you can start with the oil. You can start with a known emotion. You can start with a body point, a pain in a particular area, and then if you've gone through all of those, you don't know where else to start, then that's why looking at your body type is another really good entry point.
So now let's just say that they go, there's sort of the basic oil kit in Young Living, and they're really drawn to a particular oil. Can they just sort of do self-inquiry and then dive into your book through the oil and look through the different emotions that are coming up and see if some of those are matching pictures for them?
Absolutely. And
That's
so
really fun.
the reality is we all have all of the emotions. And
Mhm.
so I found as I was going through the various different emotions, sometimes I would pick up a particular oil and work with a particular emotion and then look at the next emotion for that particular oil, and the oil would actually smell different.
Wow. So once they cleared one aspect, which is an emotional blockage, demonstrated through their attraction to the oil, and they cleared it or just brought it into their awareness, then the oil would literally smell different to them.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes I think
That's so
there's
cool.
just different aspects of the oil that will be more prominent when you're working on a particular emotion.
Well, is it possible that as you look at the emotions that come up for a different oil, that it's like a peeling a layer of the onion, like all of these are sort of connected in some way and may be helpful or instrumental to bring into their awareness that some of these things, may even be connected. Like if I look at peace and calming, it's so fascinating that peace and calming have so many emotions. There I see
Hmm.
addiction, argumentativeness, being a victim, and depression, just as a few examples. Are there ways that these could be connected?
Um, well, even when you look at the emotions and you see how interconnected the emotions can be. And so um, there's so many different ways of really working with the emotions. And so
Because I guess these really are, if you think about addiction, argumentative, being a victim, and depression, I could certainly see how all of these sort of swirl around each other and are
yeah, yeah.
interrelated.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely do. And then control is one that's huge. And so moodiness, being scared, and they all link into the emotions of argumentativeness, being a victim, the argumentativeness, what do you do to defend? And so that again goes back into um, dealing with um, not being able to handle life. And so control is a biggie. The control is one of those things that we do in order to be safe. And so you would think the opposite of control would be out of control. It's not. It's balance. The affirmation is I am content and blessed. And so what will happen is our default system is to control.
Mm-hmm.
And but control is fear-based.
Mm-hmm.
And emotions are in one of two categories. It's either going to be fear-based or it's going to be love-based. And control is fear-based. So the other side balance is still it's being personally responsible, but not being somebody who's holds on too tight and is too controlling. You can also look at the different ways that people control. So you can control by controlling other people. You can control by controlling your environment. You can also control by controlling yourself, which almost seems kind of how's that control, but yet that's another element which will cause you to be more reserved and maybe not as forthcoming as you would be otherwise, or really feeling um, like life is safe.
So
So
if
there
they
are a
knew
lot
that
of different
control,
aspects.
I
Hmm.
love that. If they knew control was an issue, they could apply peace and calming to the stomach point, which is in the book, all the charts and the alarm points, which represent some of the acupuncture points and helps to open up
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
energy. And at the same time, they could repeat, I am content and blessed. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the affirmation is the way out for them. Well,
Yeah.
yes, that's right. Is the way out the same as the affirmation or
Yes.
no? Oh,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
great. Okay,
It's one and the
wonderful.
same. And so the other area that's a little easier to access when you're looking at the stomach point is on the palm of the hand.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. That's easy. Yeah, it is really easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. So you could just touch that or you could put the oil
Mm-hmm.
on there.
And you
So
can
yeah.
also be very subtle with that. So let's say, for example, you have somebody who has major control issues, and you might want to just put the oil on your hand, grab their hand, little hand on the
Sneaky.
forehead, little soothing, and that can work wonders. So there are subtle ways of working with the oils as well. Also, another interesting point is when you're around someone whose energy field um, doesn't have as much light as yours does, your energy field will go and swallow up their energy field, clean it up, and give it back to them. So that's how can you be a human being and actually affect someone without saying anything. So if you do the oils and put those oils on you, especially when you know that you're going to be going into a situation that can be a bit challenging, you can also have an effect because the human body is one of the best diffusers there is.
That is really cool. Well, a really interesting question came up in the chat, Carolyn. What if you hate the smell of an oil? Does that have any meaning?
That is what's really interesting because a lot of times if there's something that you absolutely hate, look at the emotion that's associated with it.
Wow,
Because
that's fascinating.
that has happened so many times is that once you look at that and shift at the emotion, then the oil shifts.
So a big part
Yeah.
of healing from your experience is really bringing awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just becoming aware
So
that you have that particular emotional place that you're blocked. And do you feel that even once you like sort of smell the oil and sort of say, yeah, I did have an issue with that, even that you could almost imagine it sort of leaving from the field at that time?
you can, and anytime you add more visualization to it, that's another thing
Ooh, that's
that
great.
magnifies it. So you can use other techniques. So
Hmm.
sometimes people will even use a tapping technique is another way. I deeply and profoundly accept myself, even though I have this whatever negative emotion it happens to be there.
Sure, the
So
EFT. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's just another way of working with the various different ways of doing it. And so one of the other things that I'll use in keeping track of the various different emotions is a chart, and that one we can kind of scan down through the uh, videos or the visuals, and I'll show you what that chart looks like and kind of where you can find that on on my website. But it's what I'll and so these are where the points are located. So we've got the points on the body, we've got the points on the forehead. Those are the only ones you really need to do. The top of the head is a crown chakra. I find that that's another way of connecting the spiritual connection. We have the release point. That's where the head and neck join. And then the filters. And the filters are really important because that's how you do not have to keep picking up and processing everybody else's emotions. You can do that in your energy field. So those can
Well,
be
tell us a
really
little bit
profound.
You tell us a little bit about that. So for someone who's like an energetic sponge, how do they use this release point to improve their feeling and not taking on other people's stuff?
Well, the one thing is they need to clear the emotions within themselves. And so
Mm,
this is why whenever I'm working with anyone, I will put the oil on them or allow them to put the oil on themselves. And then I put that on me. It's kind of that show and tell. But the other thing it does is it's another way of clearing any of those issues that I might still have at a deeper level, as well as the filter points so that I'm not picking up and processing um, things in my body, I can just process it in the energy field. So I know we have a lot
That's
of
really
people
cool.
who do a lot of energy work and are very sensitive, and so I found that to be really helpful.
That is really cool. That's very good to know about. And now the crown chakra, how do people gain benefit from sort of
Just
activating
at the
or,
top of it's the
yeah.
the crown chakra, and so when you're applying the oil, you're just putting the oil in the palm of your hand. You're going to rotate that clockwise 3 times, and then you're going to smell the oil. Um, and so usually when I put the oil on, I will rotate it clockwise 3 times, put that on the body point, the emotional point, the top of the head, the release, and the filters, and then start
Oh.
with that smelling the oil. So that way, if we're looking at purification for anger, for example,
Hmm.
and for those of you who happen to have your purification, you might want to do that as well. We do have the next slide will go into um, what those emotions. You want to go to right here, you can see this one. And so we look at the anger, purification is the oil, laughter is the other side, liver is where it goes, and your affirmation is my direction is clear. And so we're just going to take the oil, and for those of you who happen to have your purification, and we'll just take a drop, put that in your hand, rotate that clockwise 3 times, and then we have an acupuncture alarm point for the anger that happens to be on the side of the hand. Even just putting your hands together like this is enough. Emotional points in the forehead. If the skin is really sensitive, you don't even have to put the oil on the point. You can even just touch the point with another finger. Um, and the same way, top of the head. And again, it's just touching the area. You don't have to saturate it. Then we've got the spot on the back of the head, the release, and then the filters on either side. And then just
Wow.
take a breath in and connect with anger. And this is anytime you've felt anger, anything that comes to mind as far as anger, anything with anger, and breathe out and let it go. And again, just take a breath in and just let whatever memory comes up that's associated with the anger and breathe out and let it go. And then once more, take a breath in and just scan your body and see if you feel any anger in any area of your body. And if so, just breathe out and let it go. And the other side of anger is laughter. So just take a breath in and breathe in laughter. And if you don't feel like laughing, just think of some situation that makes you laugh, or thinking of someone that gives you joy. This is a laughter. And breathe out. And again, just take a breath in, breathe laughter into all the areas where the anger was, all those situations that come to mind. This is laughter. And then once more, take a breath in and breathe laughter into the areas of the body where the anger was stored. This is laughter. And the way you get there is my direction is clear. My direction is clear. My direction is clear, which allows me to let go of anger and to experience laughter. And so once you've even gone through this whole process, let's say you're out and you just think of one thing, you may just smell purification, and it can bring back the memory of what we're working with. You may
That's
just use the
wonderful.
affirmation. So there are a lot of different ways that you can use this.
It's almost like
Yeah.
if you did this process one time, I could see somebody doing it in your office, or if somebody does it at home and they've done it really successfully, when they actually smell the oil again, it'll bring up the whole um,
The
events, the
whole
whole
event
series of
and the
events will
memory.
happen again. That's
Yeah.
really powerful, Carolyn, and it's so practical because you could just smell the oil, enjoy the oil, throughout the day and have that vibration. It's kind of like with biofeedback, you'll be continuing to entrain that vibration
Mm-hmm.
again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody on here just did a huge anger release exercise. I could feel the energy shifting and changing. Somebody must be calling in right now wanting that anger release as well. They immediately felt it and wanted to be a part of it.
That could be. And so, as far as this particular chart, if you just go to my website, and which is bodytype.com, and then on there, there's a free monthly newsletter that I do, and you can link on that one. And then with that, you have an option of downloading this particular chart.
Wonderful. This is a wonderful chart. Yeah, for people to go to, say the website again.
It's bodytype.com.
Bodytype.com. And this can be like a blank sheet, you guys, that you have that you just print out a bunch of them, and you could use them in the same way that we just did this exercise. And this is being recorded, so you can watch the recording, and then you can go back and practice this with any oil, any emotion, and you could just feel how powerful this system was that Carolyn just did. But it's so easy to do as well.
Mm-hmm.
What a fabulous intelligent system you've developed here.
Yeah, and the fact that it's so simple, and even your kids will get to where they will go to a particular oil and tell you what to work with. So,
That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. Well, let's continue the rest of the explanation. And just to let people know, because we're at the top of the hour, but we do want to finish the slide presentation. And then we want to talk to you a little bit about biofeedback, do a quick testing of someone with our oil and point system, Carolyn's system, in the Genius, because Carolyn is going to join us for 4 more sessions. We're having a complete class on releasing emotional patterns, and it is going to be very exciting, you guys. In fact, one of the things we're going to explore in the class is what the true meaning of infections are, and what you need to know if you have infections in relation to certain emotional patterns. And I think this will help you if you've ever been stuck on Epstein-Barr or a fungus or even that L word, Lyme, and you want to have some tools for really powerfully clearing it. You'll have some very new and important information on this. So you'll want to find out how to join the 4 classes, and we have some very special bonuses if you want to join us for the 4 class. The 4 class series starts in 2 weeks, and it happens on Monday nights for 4 Monday nights in a row, beginning on February 11th. And we'll have more information for you very, very soon. Did you want to say more about this slide, Carolyn?
we can go on to the next one.
Sure.
And so when you've got a particular emotion, so this is when I'll go to the oils reference, and you'll notice with purification, this is what we've been talking about earlier, how there are other emotions that are associated with the oil purification. And there's another one for the liver, which is violence, which would be really escalating the anger. Some of those others can be the fear of seeing negative thoughts, which is associated with bacteria, so it's part of what we were looking at. And one of the things that I find whenever I'm working with a particular emotion, and on your sheet you can do the same thing, just pick the other emotions that jump out at you, and you can do one emotion right after the other. You can even use different oils right after each one. And a good time to do it is at night before you go to bed. Allows your subconscious to do a lot of the processing. And also in the morning when you're looking at setting the tone for the day, when you're doing your morning affirmations. And then any other time during the day when it happens to show up.
You know, that's a really wonderful thought, because a lot of people don't realize, but everything you do in the first couple of seconds of the day can set the tone for the entire day going forward. There are these very unique energetic points in a day, and they are like when you're first waking up and actually the last thing right before you're going to sleep. And they're really PowerPoints where you can install an affirmation or a thought or an idea. So someone could do this in the morning. Would they perhaps like bring in the affirmation or something?
Oh, yeah. And so the ideal one would be to go through the process we just did with anger. So you've got anger, you have laughter, my direction is clear, you have the oil, and going through the process we just did. And then any other time during the day, if you have time to go through the entire process, that's great. If you just happen to think of one particular element, that's still going to reinforce.
That's wonderful. And then the reason that these are all together is you're sort of thinking if there are any interrelated things or related emotions or emotions that are being triggered because you're looking at a similar oil. These are all the emotions for the same oil.
Correct.
That's really cool because I think people will gain a new level of awareness when they sort of see these different pieces and how it may fit for them. Like this might be a whole pattern that they're able to put together from these interlocking and related emotions and related patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really fascinating when you start looking at how things are interrelated.
Yeah, and it's really the young living oils that are so uniquely, it seems, keyed up to allow this kind of emotional journey for people. Did you find
That
that as well?
absolutely. That's one of the things that you really want to be aware of when you're doing emotional clearing is you want to be aware of the vibrational frequency of the oil. And so the Young Living oils are the highest quality. I first met Dr. Young when he had his clinic down in Mexico before Young Living actually came into focus and when he was doing a lot of the research. And so some of you may not know this. Dr. Young was one of the few noses in the world to be able to smell an oil and tell you what the constituents were and
Well,
then measure those on the spectrometer as a way of just verifying that. So that meant that every batch of oil that came in the early days, he would check and make sure that it did have the quality that it needed to have.
fascinating. Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, that's great.
And so then our next slide is just, if you want to go to the next slide, then that one um, is just a picture of just a blank form that you can go ahead and download. And if you want to go to the next one, because that's a picture of and then this is what the page would look like on my website. And when you're wanting to just, where you would find it on the page. So the one that's boxed, that's how you're going to find the download. And
Oh, that's
also,
so good. That's so specific. I love it.
okay, and then we can go to the next slide. And then this is when we were talking about our points of connection with the 25 different body types. And with the different body types, you'll notice that they fall in for the different quadrants. So those are the ones where the strengths are. So, for example, you see the mental spiritual on the left and the thyroid at the very bottom of that. The eye was the other one that we talked about that's in the mental spiritual group. And then we've got the mental physical. And so that was the adrenal, the lymph, and a few of those particular types. And you'll see different energies with those. And then you can see where the different body types fall. And what you'll find when in your relationships, even just knowing where a person's strengths are, tells you um, where their focus is. It allows you to
Mm.
be able to really relate to that person well.
Mm.
And one of the things that I noticed with my emotional friends is when they get tired, then they a lot of times don't like to put a lot of mental energy into answering a question, and then what I will get is an emotional response. So it's kind of a nice thing to know, depending on what your question happens to be. You just want to look at where a person's strengths are and at what time those things are highest.
What time?
What well, like so for the body type, for the body types that where their dominant sense is emotional, what will happen is when they get stressed, then they tend to not be so focused on the mental side, but they will respond more from the emotional area. So it's like looking at when's their when when is the best time to be able to even talk about things that could be a little more stressful or a little more challenging. And
Hmm.
so you want to work with a person when they're at their best. And so
Mm.
that would be when's their energy the highest. And so you can look at that even when you're looking at things that you're doing, taking those points in consideration. So there's just other ways of looking at your dominant strengths to know how do you schedule your day? How do you schedule your activities? It's so that you can be your best and work with other people so that they can be the same way.
Is that in your body type book where each type you talk about the best time of day and so forth?
It's not necessarily time of day so much, although for some it makes a difference, like exercise, for example. And when it comes to exercise, the adrenal body type is actually better exercising at the end of the day because that allows them to release a lot of the stress that's accumulated through the day. Um,
Mm,
Whereas the lymph body type, even though both of those are mental physical, is better off exercising first thing in the morning because it gets the lymphatic system going and gets things moving.
makes
And then
sense.
then we have the intestinal body type, and the intestinal body type has a little window, and that is basically from 11 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon when their energy is the highest, and that's when they are better off doing their exercise, because if they exercise early in the morning or late at night, they're tired, and they just don't really have the energy to be able to do it. So
Excellent.
each type has different areas that make them unique from some of the others.
Very, very good.
Okay, and so
And was there, I think there was one more slide, but I apologize. I think I
that's
goofed and omitted it.
I think it was just the basic body type or basic website, and that just shows you if you don't happen to know what your body type is, then you would just go to my main site,
Bodytype.com.
bodytype.com, and then there's an icon for taking the test for men, taking the test for women,
Okay,
and
great.
so that way you can determine your type.
Great. So in this case, yes, so if people are going to join our class, our deep dive into this information, then they will actually get this assessment on your website for free.
Correct.
So, and we also have some bonus handouts, and we're going to be reducing the price. The price is going to be $197 until the 31st of January. Then it goes up to $297 for the 4-part class. So get in on this as soon as you can, because this will really help you in breaking up really stuck emotional patterns. If for 2019 you really want to make that new start, you really want to have that new experience, you want to be able to free yourself of these emotional blockages. And this is a living manual, a living ability for you to be able to do this and have this wonderful discovery for yourself. I love how empowering your book is, Carolyn, and how many different ways that people can tap into it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and my goal is just to make things user-friendly. And the nice thing about the oils is it doesn't make any difference what point you pick, even if you just use one part of it. The nice thing is everything is going to be positive. No matter what you do, you can't screw up. So just go for it.
So we're going to really dive deep into more oils, some of the prominent oils, some of the very prominent patterns, like we talked about anger. We'll talk about really some oils that you'll want to know about that would be like major oils that would really be powerful. And we'll talk more about the body types, and we'll talk about emotional patterns that are common that come up for people. But we're also going to do live cases. And we're going to do live cases with the Genius Biofeedback System. You don't need to get the Genius Biofeedback System to participate, but it's going to be fun to see which oil on point comes up on the Genius system, and then have Carolyn explain how it may relate to the greater case at hand. So it's going to be a wonderful learning experience to see how the oil on point are used, and to really understand them at a much deeper level. And in just a moment, we're going to do a case example of that. So if you would like to volunteer and do a quick Genius session with us, we'll only take about 5 minutes to do this testing. And then we're going to see which oils on point are coming up and ask Carolyn to give us some elaboration on them and how they may relate to what your health or relationship or life goal that you're working on. So if you'd like to participate, go ahead and put your full name and date of birth down in the chat section, and that we're going to do much more of that in the 4-part class. So it's going to be a living laboratory and learning process. So Carolyn, did you ever imagine that your releasing emotional patterns would be part of a biofeedback experience?
Well, I think this is fabulous because there's just so many different ways of working with it. So, so I'm glad to be part of it.
Yeah, I love your openness to new experiences and just to share this with people so that they can have such a practical understanding. Today, after today, I feel so much more confident about diving into your book in new ways and taking that little form that you showed and really working that. And wow, I felt such a wonderful release when we were working on the anger piece too. Like, it's amazing how easy it can be.
Yeah, yeah. And how easy it is to share with other people.
So we're going to send you the link soon, but if you'd like to register for this, for the next 48 hours, you'll get the body assessment for free. And we have a special PDF handout for you, the free top oils for releasing emotional patterns. And again, it's going to be $197 for this special 4 set of classes just until January 31st. So just for a couple more days. Some of the things that we'll be covering in the class: discover why these infections exist and what to do about them. So if you know someone, or if Lyme or Epstein-Barr or a chronic candida has been part of your life, you haven't been able to sort of make progress with it, this is going to be a wonderful experience to hear Carolyn's perspective on this. And I know it was totally new ground for me to hear what she has to say about them. We'll learn the emotional lessons very quickly, like you saw today. There's so many ways, even just smelling the oil that you're drawn to. Like, how fascinating is that, to just go to your collection of Young Living oils and what's the one that you're really being drawn to, and then diving into that whole set of emotional lessons that she's showing and going, yes, that's the emotional lesson for me. And then you can go to that form and just do the process, which is so quickly, and then keep that affirmation flowing for you throughout the day. I mean, that's just totally brilliant. So clear in minutes what's taken you years, who doesn't want to do that, and really understand how to use your Young Living oils for maximum benefit. And if you're a distributor or somebody who shares the oils, this is going to be a wonderful conversation starter for you to share a context for using the oils with people who may be interested in making it part of their life. Now they have a paradigm for really utilizing the oil in a very powerful way and for a very practical reason. So I think it's really, really great. So we'll talk about why do we have so many viruses? And Carolyn will explain the hidden messages in these infections. And we'll really, really get to dive deeply into all of this. So remember to register in the next 48 hours. We're going to be sending you the link very, very shortly. And I know the class is going to fill up soon, so make sure you get registered just as soon as you can to reserve your spot. And then we'll get you your bonuses so you can get your body type assessment, so you can get that figured out. And that's probably going to shed a lot of light on some of the emotional blockages that you may have had. Now, let's go ahead and escape out of that for a moment. We want to dive right into a couple of cases. As I get that set up, Carolyn, is there anything else that I've left out in our conversation about the book and about the oils that you'd like to jump in and share with us?
I think you'll find that it really gives you a lot of the tools to be able to work with your family, work with other people that you've come in contact with. And so often what
That's
happens
great.
in the work environment is unresolved emotional things in childhood keep coming up. And so in order to really make your
Well,
life work, You
I was going to
have
say
to
that's
look
fun.
at.
That's
Yes.
fun with the people you're working with.
Yeah, yeah. It's really important to do your own work. And we've got so many tools to be able to do that. Working with the oils, working with the body typing, and giving you a direction on looking at answering those questions of who am I and why am I here and what motivates me and what's my life lesson. So it's a way of literally getting an owner's manual for the body. I've had people
Mm.
accuse me of riding around their back pockets for 20 years when they read the personality profile. And that's literally what it does, is it takes 20 years of personal self-discovery and introspection and condenses it into 4 pages, plus tells you what to do about it.
That's pretty practical.
One of the
Okay.
other characteristics, go ahead, of the thyroid is practical.
It's an immensely practical book. It's amazing how much mileage you would really get out of it. I'm really excited to dive more deeply into it now. Well, we have a setup for the session here, and so we're going to actually talk with Catherine. Catherine B. Catherine, I'm going to see if I can unmute you if you're still here, if we haven't lost you, and talk to you a bit. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Let's see if we can get you on here. You may have to unmute yourself, Catherine. See if you're able to do that. Sometimes we can't figure out all the logistics. So try your best to unmute yourself there. Oh, it worked. Yay! Hi, Catherine.
Hello.
Can you hear me? How are you?
I'm well. Well, I've got a cold actually, so this should be interesting.
Oh, good. And you came in through Carolyn, but you may not even know about biofeedback. Is that the case?
I have a Zyto
Oh, okay.
scanner.
So you're hip to the whole biofeedback concept. Well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to record your voice, and we're going to use your voice as a vehicle to getting to these oils on point. Now, let me do that first, and then we're going to ask you a little bit about what you're working on regarding the cold and stuff like that. So let me record it first. The way that we do that is I'll count you down. I'll go 3, 2, 1. I'll have you say your full name, and for 15 seconds, you're going to say the vowels: A, E, I, O, U, A, E, I, O, U, A, E, I, O, U, and I'll tell you as soon as we're done. Okay?
Okay.
I just have to turn my camera off for just 1 second. And now I'll count you down. And again, I'm going to start it in just a second. In 3, 2, 1, I am recording.
Catherine Bolin. A-E-I-O-U. 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 A-E-I-O-U.
Okay, that was perfect.
A-E-I-O-U.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. And so now we're going to bring this back. And I know, Catherine, you did have a great tip for us. Thank you so much. You said people should know if they get the Kindle, it's not searchable, so they maybe could get the ebook through Carolyn's site because that's more of a dependable, searchable a book. So thank you for that tip.
You're welcome. The Kindle version is actually like pictures of the book instead of a PDF.
Oh, of course, that makes sense. So not as useful maybe for our purposes of where we want to really search and dive into that experience.
Not at all. I mean, it's useful, obviously, but it's very
You like the ebook better for the searchability.
yeah. Oh, how funny! I'm getting messages that I'm famous now.
A lot of Carolyn's fans and the Young Living people are on today. So we're going to go to this thing called Young Living Oil on Point, and so we have Carolyn's combinations in here, and then we're going to see what combinations are coming up, what you are drawn to you, and see if there's any resonance. So before we read those, I'm going to take a whole bunch of them. The reds and the blues represent the ones that are drawn to your energy field. And I did forget to ask, besides the cold, are there any other health issues or life issues that you're really trying to make some powerful changes in your life or your health?
I'm always working on my emotions. I mean, I'm always working on being aware of the emotions. Anger, interestingly enough, anger is one that I have been aware of, uh,
Did you
made
feel that
aware of.
release when Carolyn did the guidance of that form?
I I didn't actually have my oil next to me, and I was in a foot bath, so I couldn't get up and go get it. But
I didn't even have the oil close to me, but boy, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like the energy is moving more. It was powerful just
yeah,
even to listen to it. Yeah, it was
it
great.
was really interesting.
So what we do now is we take the top 25, the highs and the lows. We do another drill down. I'm doing this fast because we're a little tight for time. But the number one that comes up here is myrtle on the chi point. Carolyn, what can you tell us about myrtle on the chi point?
Uh, see if we. So what we would do is we would go to the oils reference and look up myrtle.
And I see it actually on page 74. And what it says here is suppression.
Suppression of life. Yeah.
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 Tell us, well, tell us any resonance with that, Catherine.
Well, let me look at the rest of it. Contact, I regenerate. Yeah, the regenerate is definitely, because that's also in relation to cystis, which is rescuer.
Okay.
So I, yeah,
Catherine, you know too
I,
much.
well, I deal with this book a lot.
Oh, you
So
do? Oh, that's so
Wonderful.
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah,
So you were already able to navigate to you went right to the emotion
yeah. I
about
actually had the
suppression.
PDF of it open, so I just searched for Myrtle and popped right up to it.
Yeah, and then so did you go to suppression? And then was that the one or no?
Suppression of life is where I went. Yeah.
Because I just see, oh, suppression, emotions. Do you go to emotions suppressed or do you go to just suppressed, Carolyn?
Where
It's
that
life.
one is found under emotion is life, suppression
Yeah.
of.
Oh,
And
okay.
so the other side of that is contact. The way you get
Mhm.
there is I regenerate. And
Yeah,
so does that fit
that
for
I,
you?
yeah, because I tend to not want to reach out.
hmm And it's
Hmm.
part of that area, suppression of life is when you want to just kind of pull back and go hibernate for a while. And
Yeah, I do
sometimes
that.
that's part of that area of regenerating. And then once you've gotten to that point, then you're able to bring that life forward, which is where that reaching out, that contact is. So you're able to step out and contact other people and contact your world.
Yeah, contact is one of the things that I'm really trying to work on right now. So that's really interesting that that came up. Also, limitation, empowerment. Accept the totality of who I am and transformation. So just looking at chi alarm points
hmm
and stagnation. Yes, these are all definitely on point. Definitely.
Well, what we're going to do now is we're going to peek at your aura. I should have done it in the beginning and just see how if it's changing or how it looks. And then we're going to do two more oil on points for you. And then we'll get to a couple of others. I know Brenda. Welcome, Brenda. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this is a good time for you guys where you are. I don't know if you're tuning in from Australia or where you are now, but maybe we can get Brenda to, and I know a couple other people really wanted to volunteer. So let's see how the aura is changing. This is one of the fun things that we do on the Genius is sort of monitor the the aura. And that's a beautiful aura. Oh my gosh. Absolutely wonderful. Just a lot of healing emerald energy in there. And that sun is almost like the sun is rising, maybe rising on sort of a new, sort of stepping out and feeling like you want to be sort of more apart or activated or something. So the
Yeah, that
next one that
fits.
comes up, oh, good. The next one that comes up is grounding on the source point.
Okay.
So the emotion, Carolyn, I'll let you do the reveal on this. And for those who are looking in the book, it's on page 71.
Yeah, loss. Yeah.
Lost as far as the emotion, and boredom happens to be the other emotion. So if we go to lost.
The parasites, boredom. Yeah, I've been dealing with parasites as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. Grounding comes up twice, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So grounding, do you know that oil at all?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. And then, so parasites is, yeah, like you said, boredom. Yeah, that's fascinating that it comes up at the top twice.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's nice is you can look at where your priorities are. So it's another way of being able to look at what's going on with your life at this point. And of course, the other side of lost is direction. I connect with my inner knowing, and that's grounding on the source point. And so source, again, connecting with your inner knowing.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're just getting really positive feedback from the program itself. Like you're really taking this in really well, very, very quickly as far as we get these rectification percentages, and you're going very, very quickly through the energy. So you seem to be very familiar with working with energy and frequency.
Yes. I am actually an Aroma Freedom Technique practitioner and instructor, so that's what I do. But I use this book a lot in helping to get a better idea of the emotions and what I'm dealing with, and my clients that I'm dealing with are feeling and experiencing. I call it spinning the disco ball because you get to see
Great.
That is awesome. I love it. So final one here, grounding came up again, and we've got eucalyptus blue on on the bladder point.
Okay, that would make sense.
What do we know about eucalyptus blue frozen? Now I am seeing sort of some interesting things that fit together. The lost, the suppressed, the frozen. It's absolutely fascinating.
Ungrounded. Yeah. Oh, that's Australian blue, sorry. Eucalyptus blue. There's a lot of blues in here. Yeah, frozen and suppressed emotions.
I'm going to run these two together. The other one I noticed I think came up again before in the top sort of prioritization was the pine. That was kind of interesting. And it's pine on the mucous membrane point.
Yeah, because I have a cold.
That fits.
Yeah, and this blue is really great for respiratory support as well. So,
but the emotions is feeling unimportant.
yeah.
I can see how these all swirl. Look, we're all human. We all have intersecting things.
Yeah.
There'll be things in you I can relate to, and Carolyn can relate to. But what's really fascinating is this sort of this swirl of similarities in all of the different oil on points that came up for you. There's sort of these interconnecting issues.
Yeah, that's definitely spinning the disco ball. A good view.
There you go. It's a very, very similar process. All processes that are of the truth have similarities to them. It's just different approaches. And this is just one approach where people, it's almost like an energetic muscle test. People are able to go through these very, very quickly, but they don't have to. They could also just stop and smell the roses, and they could look up the affirmations and enjoy that, or have the form close by and fill out the form. So, yeah. So I think the good news here for you, Catherine, is that we probably were able to move some good energy today in cooperation with, your willingness to do this. And I think walking away, drink a lot of fluids. You probably already are for the cold, because you may wake up tomorrow feeling like all of your passages are clear.
That would be really nice.
Well, thank you for being part of this. We'd love to have you for the class and show you how to download the 14-day trial of the Genius if you're ever interested. We have information on that as well.
Thank you very much. This was really awesome. So the aura, did you take another look at that, or is that?
Yeah, actually, hang on because of the last 8 seconds, this is going to go through, and you've had wonderful response. We only did about maybe 4 minutes total of harmonizing, and you really were ticking through like really fast, moving through the frequencies, and we can look at the series of where you were going with that aura. So let's look at one more sort of peeling of the onion here and look at this final aura, and then we'll do a couple more. Beautiful, really ending on a very healing note. This is moving from the physical to the higher energies, which is absolutely fantastic. So absolutely beautiful, beautiful ending note there. So I think you're going to sleep really well and you're going to feel a lot better in the morning.
Very cool. Yes,
So,
thank you.
yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for being part of this evening, and thanks for your heads up on the Kindle version. That probably saved everybody a lot of downloading. So I hope we get to talk again.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, take care and feel better. All right. Well, I did send everybody the link. I know we're losing some folks, so we're going to send the link out. It's down in the chat area. So if you want the link to the class, it's down there. Any comments on sort of the collective oils or emotional issues that came up for her, Carolyn?
It's interesting seeing how they're all part of that same basic theme that she's been dealing with. And it's nice to see how the Genius brings those points up as well.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, totally. No, I love that. We're going to see this go off for just 1 second as you and I talk. Yeah, so it's a way that people can test themselves and be empowered. So it kind of goes hand in hand. It kind of walks hand in hand with your idea of a book that can help yourself, is in the same way that the Genius can also be a self-discovery tool in this way.
What I like about it is it's another way of evaluating to see what's going on, and then also seeing the changes that you make. So you do get that biofeedback, which is great. And also seeing a lot of the related emotions that may not always be that apparent to you at the time.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. Yeah, it's fun to have all of these different ways into understanding yourself better, because that's what life is really about. This is,
Yeah.
we're in school
Yeah, exactly.
to learn. Let's see if Brenda, I'm not sure we can get your voice. I would love it if we can, and check in with you. And I appreciate how much you participate in the classes. So let's see if we can get you. Brenda, you may try to unmute yourself. Brenda, are you there? Hello, hello, hello. It sounds like you were, then you weren't. Try again one more time. She's sort of in and out.
I am
Brenda.
here.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Brenda, how are you, my dear?
I am very good, thank you, Ariel.
Where are you joining us from today?
Dubai.
Dubai. How wonderful.
Yes.
I'm really glad that you're here. How is your testing with the Genius going? We haven't talked in a while.
Very good, actually. I think, you did a session for my mom, and I think she only survived it because of the Genius, because I was in hospital 24/7 with her, and I only used the Genius while I was sitting with her. I couldn't do anything else. I do a lot of other work, but I honestly got to say that the Genius got her out.
Oh, I'm so thankful to hear
Yeah.
that. Yay.
Yeah.
Well, let's do some work for you, and let's record your voice. So
Okay.
I'm going to count you down, then I'll have you say your full name, and then you
Sure.
know the drill, the
Yes.
vowels. So
Yes.
I'm just going to pop off camera for just 1 second, and I'll start recording you in 3, 2, 1. I'm recording.
Brenda Ganwani, A-E-I-O-U, 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 A-E-I-O-U,
Okay, perfect.
A-E-I-O-U.
Excellent. And what are we working on for you?
It was interesting because I was very keen on this webinar, and actually I was like, oh, let Caroline mind talk about the eye diet because I'm an eye diet and I haven't read, and she did talk about it, so I was so happy. To be
Oh,
honest,
that's great.
actually, yeah. To be honest, I actually want to look at weight. I'm unable to lose weight. I just keep on putting it on. I have got the eye diet, but I haven't yet looked at it because of my mom being sick, and I've just come back from Australia. But I would like any insight on how to deal with it.
Well, one of the things with the eye body type is the eye type needs fat and you need protein. So it's a good quality fat. For most of the body types, it's more the 30-30-40 as far as 30% fat, 30% protein, 40% carb. For the eye body type, it's 40-40-20. So 40% fat, 40% protein, and 20% carbs. And also the eye body type, you're better off with a lot of smaller meals throughout the day rather than trying to do a larger meal, although the eye is very adaptable. So you can kind of adapt it to whatever schedule you've got. The eye body type does really well with shellfish and variety. So the tendency is to find something you like and keep eating the same thing day after day, which
Yeah.
is true for anybody, but especially for eyes. What that does is it depletes pancreatic enzymes. And so you're better with more variety, and you do really well with nuts and seeds as well as your proteins. Avocados, good fats, those are good fat sources. So it's basically your protein and vegetables is going to be your main dietary focus.
Brenda, are there
Thank
any
you.
other life issues that sort of concomitant or match with your desire to sort of release the energy? Is there anything other part of your life that's sort of percolating up for you?
I only can think that I emotionally eat, so I actually probably carry a lot of stress. So I emotionally eat chocolates when I'm down, so I go through that up and down phase.
I see. But is there anything like obviously with your mom, that's a huge stressor. Are there other sort of things that you're transitioning through in life, changing not career, but anything else that's sort of changing or switching around?
No, not really.
Okay, so you're pretty satisfied in most areas of your life.
Yes, at the moment, yes.
And also for the eye body type, it's a lot of suppressed emotions. So many times there are things that you either thought you handled or things that aren't really coming to the surface right now. So that can be another thing to look at. A lot of times that will show up in the body and shows up as excess weight.
Yes,
Well,
thank you.
we have Jasmine on the CX at CV5. I can't wait to ask Carolyn about this one. But the emotion
That's
says, go ahead. I don't want to steal your thunder. Go for it.
um, so CV5 is the acupuncture point, circulation sex. And so then we're looking at the emotion that's stored.
Carolyn's cutting out.
Fear,
Carolyn, you're cutting out a little bit, but go. Yeah,
okay.
try.
Fear of being
I find
used.
so fear of being used. Is it being used or fear of being used?
All of them are fear, and so it can
Okay.
also be what's actually happening. So it can either be what is being happening or the fear of it happening. And so this is under used. So that would be being used. The other side is respected. And the way you get there is I respect who I am. So
Nice.
again, the tendency a lot of times is I'm strong, I can handle it. And it's just taking on more than is necessarily the best for you, and then resenting it. So resentment can be another thing that can come up. But this,
So is any of that resonating for you, Brenda?
Yes, it makes sense. It does. It does.
That's very cool. Oh, we kind of lost Carolyn for a second. We kind of
am I
lost you
still
there for a
connected?
second, Carolyn.
Am
Yeah,
I?
you're still connected now. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, let's find if we can find one more. What is hope on the eye lymph point is kind of interesting. Blindness, so sort of like not being able to see things for as they are, sort of an energetic blindness.
And it can also be blindness to a situation, which is the same thing that you're really saying. So blindness in a lot of areas of life. Sometimes it can even be a particular area. And so the other side of that one is illumination, bringing light into the area. And I breathe with certainty. It's part of that stepping back and just allowing yourself to take in the illumination, the positive energy that you're wanting. And it's easy to be blinded when you've got a lot of emotional stress. We kind of get blinded by other people's expectations and the things that we impose in ourselves. So a lot of that is that should. How many times do you end up the shoulding on yourself? I should do this, I should do that, which is not always what's really the best for taking care of you. It's finding the balance.
What was the, we got off topic. What was the, if we can say it nicely, what was the FU emotion? Was that the brain that had that emotional pattern, or where was the context of that?
Well, it's one for I, but it's not limited to I. So we also have balanced and nervous system as ones where that ends up being this core emotional issue. And so when I was looking at is what's the other side. And so the ego, again, is here to protect, and it will protect in one of two ways, either by rolling over and being a victim, or you're going to stand and fight. And so that way, when you stand the fight, that's when you want to give somebody the finger. And I found that when you're clearing the emotion, it helps to actually speak the emotion rather than kind of dancing around it. I found one of the most freeing experiences that I had was when I was working with another patient of mine, and we were in the car, and we gave ourselves permission to say all the things that nice girls don't say. We ended up laughing so hard, and that was such a freeing experience. So so that means when you're working with the frankincense, it's okay to say fuck you. And the other side of that is detachment. I stand in my power.
Wonderful. The next one that came up for Brenda is abundance on the eye on parietal point. And I see that the emotion is struggling.
And so then with struggle,
so we'd go to the emotion of struggle.
and the other side is clarity. I accept my emotions.
That sounds like exactly what you said, something about suppression of emotion. And I think that comes back to when you do have weight, sometimes the weight is energy you're not able to move it. It's sort of energy that's not in motion. So therefore there could be some suppression. Do you agree? Or?
And again, we go back into one of those core identifying areas with the eye body type, and that's the repressing of emotions. And the eye alarm point, or one of the point on the hip joint where the eye body type will gain weight right over that hip joint is an eye point in Chinese medicine. And so that's another area where weight will have a tendency to accumulate when you're either suppressing the emotions and not getting enough fat in your diet, because so often we're so programmed to thinking that if you want to get rid of extra weight, what you have to do is you have to cut out your fats. And when you cut out your fats, those are your essential fatty acids. And that suppresses production of hormones as well as a lot of other functions in the body.
Mm. Yeah, I think moving the energy is the thing that's really the key here. And then the other thing was transformation on the spleen point, and the emotion is, what is the use? I wonder if Brenda has some of that energy of just being tired and just feeling like, what is the use?
A lot of times that happens when you're just exhausted.
There's a question here. What did you say we were getting a free online body type test for free? That's if you join our class. It's a little bonus for you and a thank you for joining our class in the next 48 hours. And the link is down in the chat area if you'd like to join it. Join us. If not, you can still go to bodytype.com and you can get the assessment there. So you still could do it. We're just giving it as a free bonus to anybody who wants to join the class. Carolyn, what were you saying?
Back to that, when you're looking at what is a use, then that the underlying emotion with that one is a feeling of useless or feeling of worthless. And so the other side of worthless is approval. And the strongest approval is self-approval, rather than looking at approval from an outside source. And your affirmation is, I am valuable. And that is the alarm point. Gums and teeth is another area. A lot of times I find that can be a major issue for the eye body type, but also a lot of other areas. And if you've got a chronic low-grade infection in the gum area, the teeth are associated with different organs, and sometimes that can be another area that can create more stress on the body.
Wonderful. Very, very fascinating. So let's get one more sort of drill down. Then you guys, it's getting late, so we're going to wrap up. Thank you, Brenda, for being part of class today. And please go register and join us, because we're going to be doing this for the 4 subsequent Mondays starting on February 11th. And you're going to get a lot more insight into these oils on point and Carolyn's thought process about it, these different patterns and so forth. So let's just do, oh yeah, we got one more. This is sort of just reminds me of rebirth, of a new beginning. So there's a lot of really pastel colors coming in, a lot of lightness, and it reminds me of when we talk about in class, we talk about the reset. So I think Brenda's experiencing a bit of a reset. So thank you everyone for being part of the class, and especially Carolyn, thank you for coming up with this tremendous system that can benefit so many people, and it's true self-empowerment. So thank you for giving people the ability to heal themselves.
Well, thank you, and I just really appreciate all you're doing to share this with people and to make it available.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. People I know really, really loved it and enjoyed it and got a lot out of this. So again, thank you so much to Carolyn, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you can join us for the greater class, and until then, take care everyone. Much, much love and good health. Have a good night. Thanks again, Carolyn. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. Bye-bye for now.